Don't jingle, that's the key in there.
There's a space between those two buildings. Oh, yeah. This side, you're off. newspapers, offices, and 3 other businesses. The owner of the Canby News, Gerald Bone, says that his paper will be out as usual next Tuesday with a full story on the very fire that burned it down. Damages are expected to total more than $1 million in that city, but the historical loss is far greater. The buildings which burned were built in 1895. They're the old-fashioned character of that city is lost forever. Also gone is the birthplace of the original chocolate chip.
Now, the New Year's Day report.
Good evening. Firemen at Canby, Minnesota are spending New Year's Eve on duty. Destroyed 2 buildings and 4 businesses on Main Street. The blaze started in the area of a restaurant's pizza oven, then spread to a law firm, an optometrist's office, and a weekly newspaper. The blaze still has hot spots flaring up. The only
American Datsun dealers.
It has been just a bit more than 24 hours since firefighters doused a big blaze, but the damages have still not been totaled up. 4 different businesses were destroyed, including the city's newspaper, the Canby News. With us by phone, the owner of the paper. Gerald, are you there?
Yes.
Well, you just must be devastated. How long has the Canby News been? And I trust in the tradition of 106 years, you're going to be back in business.
We'll be back next week.
Oh, tell me some of the other businesses that were hurt.
P.K. Egan's restaurant, attorneys, Qualley and Bolton, and the optometrist, Dr. Jan.
And you're talking about a city of approximately what size?
2147.
So it's just a bit more than 2,000 people. So when 4 businesses like that are destroyed, it's going to have a large effect on the city.
That's right.
What are the people there saying today about what has occurred?
Well, I think it's a situation that was still kind of hard to believe. The people have been super. 3 of the businesses have been relocated, and we'll be back into operation this week.
How are you going to put the newspaper back in business? That's not an easy task. Was the equipment you used to print in the building that was destroyed?
The equipment that was used to print was taken out and is in one of the other buildings in town. And we have found another building, and we will start moving our equipment into there tomorrow.
I would imagine that one of the first editions will carry an in-depth article about this fire, and perhaps even some questions about how it started. Do you have any information about that as yet?
Other than the fact that it started in the P.K. Egan's, they are not definitely sure. I talked with the fire chief this afternoon, and they talked the oven area or the ventilation of the grill area.
Gerald, do you have as yet any idea how much in terms of damage Canby is facing?
Well, conservatively from one source, today he figured $500,000. But it does not, you're looking at probably 12 businesses that were probably affected through smoke damage.
All right. Well, we'll be looking for the next edition of the Canby News when it rolls off the presses, and that will offer free shuttle service to the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. Parking there will cost $5 a day. It costs $8 at the airport itself. Residents of the tiny western Minnesota community of Canby began their new year on a sobering note as they began to pick up the pieces after a fire destroyed a portion of the town's business district yesterday. It took 60 firefighters from Canby and surrounding communities several hours to bring the blaze under control. Colleen Needles reports.
Last night, as the temperatures plunged, firefighters continued to douse the smoldering ruins, and before daybreak, they had pumped the town's water tower dry. This morning, as the smoke cleared, not even Mother Nature's handiwork could mask the fire's devastation. In total, 4 businesses were destroyed: a doctor and lawyer's office, a restaurant, and the town's newspaper, the Canby News. Fire officials are still trying to put the pieces together, but it's estimated this fire caused more than $1 million worth of damages. But for the small town of Canby, the loss from this New Year's Eve fire goes far beyond that. This corner of town was built in 1895. Its leaded glass windows, its stamped metal ceilings, and much of its character are gone forever. Another victim, but one that will survive, is the town's 109-year-old newspaper. In this week's issue, the paper features a residential fire. Now it must scramble to cover another.
Well, you didn't think you'd have to cover your own. And, well, it's be back, I hope. I'm sure we will be in publication next week.
Every week has been a deadline, and next Tuesday morning will be one more deadline, and we'll have it out, just like we always have.
The Bones were out of town when they received word of the fire. Their son Corey and the paper's general manager were able to salvage much of the business before the smoke forced them out.
By the time I got here, it was already getting smoky in the building, so I kind of groped away into my office and grabbed the camera equipment because I knew that it's still a job and I would still be covering it with photographs.
We started hauling stuff out, and within about another 5 minutes, I'd say there's 30, 40 people, and they're just grabbing everything that they could.
Although several businesses have closed temporarily because of smoke damage, life in this tiny community is expected to return to normal soon. With the exception of the restaurant, all the damaged businesses plan to relocate and reopen immediately. You can read all about it when the Canby News.
That is almost 4 times the number of requests they received last New Year's Eve. The owner of the Canby, Minnesota newspaper vows to keep the presses rolling despite yesterday's fire, which destroyed the paper's offices and 3 other businesses. The owner of the Canby News, Gerald Bones, says that his paper will be out as usual next Tuesday with a full story on the very fire that burned it down. Damages are expected to total more than $1 million in that city, but the historical loss is far greater. The buildings which burned were built in 1895. There, the old-fashioned character of that city is lost forever. Also,
It's safe.
Started in an exhaust fan for an oven in a restaurant. Today, people affected by the destruction in the southwestern Minnesota town were finally able to see it firsthand. News 11's Jim Douglas was there as they scoured the ruins to see what did and did not survive.
Good going, boys.
Although fire ravaged the building, it didn't penetrate a vault that held all of attorney Bud Qualley's records.
Congratulations.
For that, he was thankful. Jerry Bowen is thankful, too. He's a publisher of the Canby News.
Main thing. That's the first thing we thought of when we seen the smoke coming. And the rest will go on.
Jerry bought the paper 2 years ago and spent about $20,000 to remodel the building. His wife, Eloise, worked in advertising.
Well, the ad department is the one over there, up against the wall, the two counters that you see sticking up.
Today, for the first time, they walked through ice-coated ruins that was their home away from home, the Canby News. Some equipment was saved, 3 computer typesetters and a copy processor, and some office equipment. But that was about all. A safe near the front of the building held some valuables. They opened it today.
There ain't much in there, but here's all the subscriptions.
Jerry and Eloise aren't fully insured, but they insist they'll rebuild, perhaps here. Already, next week's paper is being prepared. The Canby News has temporarily moved into the vocational school. Back on the street, people just assume there'll be a paper next week.
Lady come up to us and asked if the paper was going to be out, and I said yes, and she says, oh, good, I have an ad to run in it.
The weekly Canby News will be on the street next Wednesday. In Canby, Minnesota, I'm traveling man Jim Douglas reporting.
Coming up, getting ready for the long-awaited arms talks.